Christensen. I'm Executive Director of Reconciliation Strategy and Leadership and Professor of Indigenous Studies at Swinburne. I respectfully acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land on whom we're speaking tonight, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. It is a great pleasure to welcome Wurundjeri Elder Uncle Colin Hunter Jr. Uncle Colin is a proud Wiradjuri man whose traditional lands extend from inner city Melbourne, south from Wadialla Creek, west of the Werribee River and east to Mount Baw. Uncle Colin was the first traditional owner in Victoria to be employed on country and local government and has worked at Yarra City Council managing their Aboriginal partnership policy. I'd like to invite Uncle Colin to welcome to country. Thanks.
Yeah, I suppose firstly I'd like to apologise. I've got me beanie on, it's cold in Melbourne and I've had enough of it. I've been sick for like the last 15, since October, but it was off work for 14 weeks, so yeah, you get me as I am, I suppose, tonight. Yeah, look, thank you for that. I want to start off by acknowledging that that was correct. We are meeting on the lands of my ancestors, the Wurundjeri people. And I want to take this opportunity to pay my respects to my elders, both past, present and future, elders from all nations, but I want to pay my respects to everyone here this evening. But I always like to acknowledge the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us. But I'd also like to acknowledge you, Auntie Jill, over there, sitting there in the corner hiding, Auntie Jill Gallagher, who's now taking the role of the Treaty Commissioner on, so big job for Auntie Jill. Woman Jekka, welcome. Wurundjeri Barak Yemen Kondi Big. The Wurundjeri people welcome everyone to land today. Wurundjeri no Buddhambo War Kondi Nengnak Dubadam Big Bully Boy Tilikan. The Wurundjeri people want to look after and protect the land as they did long before. Wurundjeri country extends from the inner city of Melbourne. It goes across the mountains of the Great Dividing Range, west to the Werribee River, south to the Wadialla Creek and east to Mount Baw. And the Wurundjeri people are part of the Kulin Nation and of the Warong language group. Hello, my name is Colin Hunter Jr. or Willert, meaning possum. A name given to me by my grandmother as a young boy. I'm a proud and passionate 7th generation Wurundjeri man and a direct descendant of Aboriginal, who was Nullingeta, who headed the tribe at time of first settlement. And it's through my grandmother Gumbriar, meaning white dove, or only tiny and Nana, she was known to all us mob, that I got Aboriginal culture and heritage in my life today, so for that I say thanks, Nan. My grandmother was one of the last of the Aboriginal people born in the early 1920s up at Corndeck Mission in Hurstville, before she got pushed up the barrel on the river in New South Wales. In Aboriginal culture, a great deal of respect is given to the land, the plants and then also light. And I always got my gum lambs. I was a bit short and I had to climb a tree just before. Yeah, I always bring them with me and I'll leave them somewhere. And if you get a chance before you leave tonight, take a nice one and bring your pot for me. The significant day will keep you safe for long country and give the accesses and resources to our own country. And while you're on our country, you're welcome to the traditional lands and the waterways of the Wurundjeri people. So woman Jekka, welcome. Look, it was really remiss of me, not to be standing here now and not to acknowledge and pay my respects to my Uncle William and my Uncle Simon. So that was a bit of a mistake of mine, sorry. You know, 2 cousins that were born in the same year, 1824, I think it was. You know, they're both little boys when they witnessed that treaty down on Mary Creek there. I always like to encourage people to get on the internet and punch in Wurundjeri or Corindoo to see what comes up. Because there's that story on them as a young mob when they watched that treaty get signed. You know, and we fit from 35 to another 20 years later, there was well under 100 of them mob. I think it was only 18. Because we all descend from Auntie Annie Barak, Uncle William's sister, from the one lady. And there's that other story of Corindoo, you know, that self-determined nation up there. And I always say, all us mob from Corindoo, we're all related somehow. We are. You know, I think a generation up there, that's killing firing, producing award-winning hops, bringing them down to the Royal Melbourne Show, winning awards, still waiting on the prize money. Yeah, but as I said, I was remiss of not to acknowledge them two great men. You know, who watched it from young boys, from the start of it to the finish of it. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Uncle Colin, for your generous welcome to country. It's a great pleasure to introduce Professor Linda Christensen, AO, Vice-Chancellor and President of Swinburne. Professor Christensen drives Swinburne's vision to be a world-class university, creating social and economic impact through science, technology and innovation. She's leading Swinburne's program of change. This will consolidate Swinburne as an internationally recognised university that delivers quality research and teaching excellence. Professor Christensen also leads Swinburne on our journey of reconciliation and our engagement with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. I would like to welcome Professor Christensen to the stage.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I would also like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where we're gathered tonight, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And may I also extend a warm welcome and my respect to elders of other Aboriginal communities present here today. I want to say a special acknowledgement and thanks to Uncle Colin Hunter. Thank you for your heartfelt welcome to country. I can only guess at the emotion that must sit behind this kind of moment.
Thank you.
Can I also acknowledge Auntie Jill Gallagher AO, Victorian Advancement Treaty Commissioner. Having you here tonight is especially momentous given the time in our history, and I hope that people in this room will remember that we were here tonight to hear you speak. Swinburne staff, students, alumni and friends, it's wonderful that you can join us. It's my privilege to welcome you to this very special event that has become a most important night in our university calendar. It is the Swinburne Barak Wonga Oration, named after Australia's notable Aboriginal leaders, our country, William Barak and Simon Wonga, and it's very special to all of us as we think about our shared history together. It signifies our commitment to understanding the issues that affect Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. At Swinburne, it's important to all of us to that Indigenous knowledge and culture are recognised and are embedded in how we work together and how we educate our students. Tonight, it's fitting that Auntie Jill Gallagher's oration reflects on reconciliation and how we can bring people, organisations and communities together. How understanding of reconciliation can become embedded in our community through understanding actions and legislation. Swinburne is dedicated to advancing reconciliation in our university and within the wider community. We're at the halfway mark of our second Reconciliation Action Plan, or RAP as we call it for short. This second RAP builds on our long-standing commitment to the education and training of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, organisations and communities. And our RAP also frames our work to embed Indigenous knowledges, history and wisdom in our teaching, research and our daily work together. Reconciliation Australia endorsed our RAP at the Elevate level, the highest endorsement possible. We were the first university in Australia to achieve this milestone, and it was both humbling and an historic experience for us. We celebrated the moment, but we did not stop our work, just as Jill has not stopped hers. We know that this designation calls upon us to do more and to serve as thought leaders in the wider community. Reconciliation is not something that happens by accident. It is a purposeful journey that we share across Swinburne. We continue to move from symbolism to meaning in reconciliation through our actions. We continue to strengthen our efforts by working, reflecting and learning as a community. Tonight's Barak Wonga Oration is a significant part of our journey, and happily coincides with a significant milestone for the broader Victorian community. Reconciliation is about making our community a better place for all, and who better to help us bring that together than Jill Gallagher AO. Through Jill's work and that of many community members, the Advancing the Treaty Process with Aboriginal Victorians Bill 2018 was recently passed by the Victorian Parliament. Let's just pause for a moment to appreciate the enormity of this achievement for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, for all Victorians, and for all Australians. Swinburne strongly supports this move towards a treaty in Victoria and welcomes this decision and the dedication and courage it takes to persevere. Through the bill, we have all committed to a process of truth-telling and of healing. We have committed to making this journey together. So thank you for attending tonight's oration, and I know it will be a very special evening.
Thanks very much, Vice-Chancellor, and thanks again for your strong support over many years for reconciliation here. The Swinburne annual Barak Wonga Oration is named in honour of two significant Wurundjeri leaders, Barak and Simon Wonga. I'd like to acknowledge Dr. Andrew Peters for helping develop the concept of the oration and for creating the name of the oration. This lecture series is designed to advance understandings amongst the Australian community on Aboriginal and Torres Islander issues. The oration is a key element of Swinburne's reconciliation action planning. As the Vice-Chancellor mentioned, Swinburne is at the halfway mark of our 3-year Elevate RAP. I'm delighted we've achieved many successful outcomes over these 18 months across the 7 RAP themes, which are governance, culture, employment, students, engagement, teaching and learning, and research. Some of these outcomes include a significant increase in the number of Aboriginal and Torres Islander staff and students at Swinburne. The creation of the RAP Supporters Network, whose members come from all areas of Swinburne and who are engaging in fantastic reciprocal partnerships with the Mandani Turnbull Centre. The provision of expert advice on reconciliation and RAPs to numerous organisations, including other universities and community organisations. The creation of 2 annual public lectures, the one tonight, which is the Barak Wonga Oration, and also our reconciliation lecture. And a substantial increase in the presence of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture at Swinburne, both in a physical sense, in an online space, and in the research, teaching and engagement activities at the university. We have 2 examples of this engagement here tonight, both created and led by Angela Burt, Manager, Indigenous Strategy at the Mandani Turnbull Centre. One example is the collaboration between the Mandani Turnbull Centre and the Engineering Practice Academy to develop the Bunjil's Nest installation, which can be seen in the foyer. If you haven't had a chance to see it yet, I encourage you to have a look at this after the lecture. Another example is the Women's Basket Weaving Workshop. 12 women from across Swinburne participated in the workshop. We have a short video of the event.
It's very, very important that we continue on this cultural tradition and keep it alive. We come together as strangers, but everyone leaves as titters.
Swinburne's RAP recognises the key components of reconciliation: acknowledging history, improving relationships, addressing socioeconomic conditions, and critically recognising Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander rights. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander rights, such as the treaty, self-determination, sovereignty and land rights are possessed by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people by virtue of them being the owners of the continent. Many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders have long argued that the recognition and protection of Aboriginal rights is critical to achieving genuine reconciliation in this country. The importance of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander rights is also recognised on the international stage. Today, the 9th of August, marks the United Nations International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres stated about this day, "On this annual observance, let us commit to fully realising the United Nations declarations on the rights of Indigenous peoples, including the rights of self-determination and to traditional lands, territories and resources." And looking at the experience of Indigenous peoples internationally, it is a shameful fact that Australia remains the only former British colony to not have enacted a treaty with Indigenous peoples. Countries such as New Zealand, the United States and Canada, which have enacted treaties with their Indigenous peoples, have demonstrable better governance structures, relationships and outcomes than does Australia. It is timely then that this year's Barak Wonga Oration looks at the recent passing of the Advancing the Treaty Process with Aboriginal Victorians Bill 2018, the first time an Australian government has passed such legislation. As Vice-Chancellor mentioned, Swinburne strongly supports this move towards the treaty. It is now with great pleasure I welcome and introduce our 2018 Barak Wonga Oration Speaker, Jill Gallagher AO. A proud Kunjamara woman, Jill is a highly respected Victorian Aboriginal leader who has dedicated her life to advocating for self-determination outcomes on behalf of the Victorian Aboriginal community. Jill commenced as Victorian Treaty Advancement Commissioner at the start of 2018. And as Jill mentioned earlier, she's already done over 100 public lectures since then. She's spent the past 20 years advancing Aboriginal health and wellbeing on behalf of the Victorian Aboriginal Community-Controlled Health Organisation, including 14 years as CEO. Jill was recognised for outstanding contributions to the community when she was inducted into the Victorian Honour Roll of Women in 2009, awarded the Order of Australia in 2013, and inducted in the Victorian Aboriginal Honour Roll in 2015. Jill has also been advocating for the Victorian Aboriginal community as co-chair of the Aboriginal Treaty Working Group and has been closely involved in the Victorian journey to treaty. It is fitting that on the United Nations International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples, and with Victoria recently passing Australia's first treaty bill, that Jill will speak about her involvement in the process and the role our community plays in supporting this work. It's a great pleasure to invite Jill Gallagher to deliver the 2018 Swinburne Barak Wonga Oration.
Wow. Thank you for that introduction. And Linda, thank you very much for your heartfelt speech. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge that I am on Aboriginal land, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders, past and present. In particular, I know Uncle Colin has left, but I always enjoy his welcomes to country. It's always, I learn something every time, so I enjoy listening to his talking. I also want to pay my respects throughout Victoria, to elders throughout Victoria, whose struggle and sacrifices has brought us to where we are today. We've had a lot of great leaders, great elders, and we need to continue to acknowledge their hard work and their foundation settings that allows us to be where we are today. I'm a proud Aboriginal woman from Western Victoria. I'm a Gunditjmara woman, and at the start of this year I was appointed Victoria's first Treaty Advancement Commissioner. And I would also like to thank Andrew and Swinburne in general for all the work that they're doing to showcase Aboriginal culture, Aboriginal issues, and I think it's just some great work. And the fact that Reconciliation Australia endorsed your advanced rap. I can see why they have, so thank you. I'm proud to speak at the annual Barak Wonga Oration. William Barak and Simon Wonga are true champions of the Wurundjeri people and should inspire all Aboriginal people in Victoria to continue the struggle for justice and self-determination. Tonight provides us with an opportunity to listen, to reflect and learn, to learn about the ways we can achieve true reconciliation in Victoria. Today, as already mentioned, today is the International Day of the world's Indigenous peoples. I'm not sure if we've seen any media about that or anything on the TV, or I'm not sure whether we've witnessed anything today on that, and it's quite sad that we haven't. But that's an indication of the times we live in. Today, this day recognises the struggle. The Day of the World Indigenous Peoples. It recognises the struggles and the achievements, not just of Aboriginal people in Australia, but Indigenous people across this planet. We are connected in our quest for self-determination, human rights, and recognition of sovereignty. We know that Victoria was occupied prior to colonisation. That's a fact, it's not a myth. Our communities here in Victoria had, and still have, very complex social structures and our own law that governs our ways of life. Our people knew how to use the environment for our survival. We knew our country. We knew about fire farming and fish farming. We knew how to look after the land so that the land would still look after us. At Budj Bim, in my own country, down in Western Victoria, this was volcanic country, littered with dormant lava flows and rocks. But my ancestors developed a system of aquaculture across that country. We dug channels and diverted the river. We created storage ponds for eels, which we harvested all year round, using woven traps, and smoked them in hollow tree logs. My people lived in stone buildings alongside this elaborate fish farming system. The idea that we were just hunter-gatherers, nomads wandering the land aimlessly, was a myth. Though I think we were pretty good at it, by the way, wandering around. But it was a myth. We had our own traditional lands, our own traditional boundaries. Colonisation was catastrophic for our people. For Aboriginal communities in Victoria, colonisation was brutal and had devastating impacts on us as a people, and it still does today. With the introduction of diseases, massacres, theft, forced relocation of our peoples and generations of Aboriginal children stolen. I'll just pause there for a little minute to reflect on the video that you showed earlier, with an elder teaching people how to the traditional way of basket making. Back in my mother's day and my grandmother's day, it was illegal to do that. It was illegal to teach the young women the continued art of traditional basket weaving. It was illegal to speak our language and to practice our culture, because on the missions you weren't allowed to. But isn't it great that we can still teach it today? This all had an incredible impact that we still grapple with today. And that manifests through a lot of the statistics that we hear about, that we read about, that we experience. The overrepresentation of our mob in the justice system. The rates of Aboriginal children in out-of-home care. It's the highest in the world. Without a doubt, these were crimes against humanity. But despite all this, we still remain a strong and proud people. Our communities continue to grow and make great strides. We have established institutions that express our truly unique cultural footprint on this world. We have advocated for a proper place in our own country. We have developed inspirational champions in the process. And we have created organisations to promote the welfare and advancement of our communities. But there's still unfinished business in this country. Unfinished business in this land. And this is the unfinished business of treaties with the first peoples of this country. As mentioned earlier, Australia is the only developed Commonwealth country that does not have a treaty with the first people of the country. In 1835, when John Batman signed a treaty with the local Kulin clan elders, trading 600,000 acres of land for a mere blankets and trinkets and an annual tribute. The treaty was annulled a few months later. And in hindsight, when you look at the deal that was struck, because it was a rotten deal, you think, well, thank God it was annulled. I also believe that the Kulin clan elders that signed that treaty believed they weren't signing their land away. They believed they were signing permission to come onto our land and share it with us. But what it does mean, though, there was a treaty signed back in 1835. So what that tells us is that government knew, even back then, that this country was not terra nullius. They knew that there was a sovereign people that occupied this country, that lived this land, that nurtured this land. But I had no doubt both William Barak and Simon Wonga, I know that both William Barak and Simon Wonga were present at the signing of the treaty. I had no doubt that that event spurred their future roles as champions of Aboriginal people in this state. I believe that the event taught them the importance of self-organisation and in coming together to achieve self-determination for Aboriginal people in this state. We've had just short of 200 years in this country of broken promises. Bob Hawke, when he first came into office, he promised a treaty by 1990. 27 years later, Malcolm Turnbull rejected the Uluru Statement. Shame. So, but what's different in the state of Victoria? What's different now that's happening here? We know that the call for treaty isn't a new call. We've had our champions in our past. We've had our elders in the past who have called for treaties. But what is new is that in Victoria, government heeded this call. In early 2016, the state government held a self-determination forum at Federation Square and the Aboriginal Advancement League there, asking Aboriginal community what the self-determination mean to us. What does self-determination look like for us as Aboriginal people? The mob that turned up to that forum basically called again, we need a treaty with government. That is true self-determination. The first stage in the process was to work out who negotiates treaties. How is it going to look in Victoria? The first stage in the process is working out a representative structure for Aboriginal people in Victoria, our collective voice that can talk to government. This is somewhat unique to Victoria. Colonisation, as I said earlier, had a humongous impact. It smashed around our clans, our traditional way of doing business, our traditional way of making decisions. And sought to dismantle our connection to our culture and to our country. As you well know, we in the Aboriginal community are still trying to pick up those pieces. Not just through treaty, but through land rights, the current Heritage Act, the Traditional Owner Settlement Act, that is a state piece of legislation, is trying to work out who can speak for country in Victoria. What this means for treaty is that, unlike some other states, there's no clearly defined structure for nations that covers the whole state. Therefore, our first job is to construct a representative structure to work as the counterpart to the state government. This is a challenging concept because pre-colonisation, we as Aboriginal people had no need for a statewide structure. That was not our way of doing business. We didn't have a state. So it's quite foreign for us to try and do this in a culturally appropriate way. My role as a Treaty Advancement Commissioner is not to negotiate treaties. I believe that's a while off. My responsibility is to establish this Aboriginal representative body. The representative body will work with government to establish a treaty negotiating framework which sets out the groundwork, including what is on the table and what is off the table, and who negotiates treaties, how a treaty is going to be negotiated. Is there going to be one treaty? Is there going to be one treaty plus multiple treaties? All those questions need to be answered. Their role is also to establish a treaty authority which will be independent, which will be the independent umpire in the whole process. Their role is also to establish a self-determination fund which will support Aboriginal communities to be on an even playing field with government when we actually get round to the negotiating table. This will be a democratic voice for our people in the treaty process, and it will be independent of government. I had the difficult task to create within what is essentially a white construct, a body representative of Aboriginal people of Victoria and infused with our culture. In establishing this body, I must ensure that traditional owners' voices are central. I'm also doing my best to include as many Aboriginal people living in Victoria What I mean by that is Aboriginal people who may be from other parts of the country, just to be clear. So I'm doing my best to take into account everyone's views. In other words, next year the Aboriginal people of Victoria will vote for their representative on this body. We need to make sure we put up our strongest hunter-gatherers. I will be asking all Aboriginal people in Victoria to enrol to vote and start considering who might stand in elections. We are further, just before I go on to that, we all Aboriginal people to enrol. So some of the thinking around this representative body is that only traditional owners who have cultural connection to country within the borders of Victoria can stand to be on this representative body. But all Aboriginal people living in Victoria can vote for that representative body. We are further on the path to treaty than ever before. And believe me, it's no easy task. But I know that we are on the right road, and I know that we can do it. Treaty is about fundamental change. This fundamental change is about three things. First, treaties enable us to perform the ultimate act of self-determination. This will result in the recognition of us as a sovereign peoples. Second, treaties will result in the empowerment of our communities on issues ranging from culture, economic development, land rights and education. Third, treaties can acknowledge that this land was taken from us. Treaties will therefore give us the opportunity to reset our relationship with the state. We have 80,000 years of history on this country. We have language, we have song, and we have culture. Why can't we show the world what a strong, contemporary Aboriginal culture, permeates this land. Why can't we have a strong cultural presence, a strong cultural footprint across the landscape of Victoria? A treaty can do that. I want to see a world where this culture is taught, where our cultures are taught in schools, where you see it in the landscape, where you see it in our language and our politics. It'd be awesome if we can converse in language together as Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. This is what treaties have the potential to give us as Aboriginal people, but us as all people in Victoria. In conclusion, this is an incredible, exciting time for us as Aboriginal people in Victoria, and I believe for all Victorians. It's history in the making with the legislation, the work that we're doing. We have a willing government. Everyone has a responsibility to be involved in this process and stay informed. You should be talking with your communities about what you've heard, about what you know, how important treaty is, how it is fundamental to our human rights and our self-determination as Aboriginal people. Someone mentioned, I think it was you, Linda, you mentioned truth-telling. The Uluru Statement was very heavy in relation to seeking truth-telling. And truth-telling isn't about making people feel guilty about the past. The past is the past. We can't change it. But we have to learn from it. And to learn from it, you have to know it. And so therefore, we as a country have got to stop sweeping the past under the carpet. So people should never feel guilty if we go down the road of telling the truth, talking about the crimes against humanity that were committed on our peoples in the name of colonisation. You can learn more about the work that we're doing by following us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, which I'm pretty proud of. We have Twitter, and we also have a web page. And if people wish to sign up to get regular updates from the office, if we have your email address, we can. The government has also launched into, and you've probably heard of it, a campaign called Deadly Questions. A campaign promoting all Victorians to start thinking more about Aboriginal Victorians and our place in this state. So, if you're not familiar with Deadly Questions, go and have a look in the privacy of your own home. Google it. Ask some questions and look, see what answers you get. I'm excited to be at the forefront of this stage of the treaty process. I'm excited as an Aboriginal woman to be involved in this historic work that we're doing. And I invite everyone to be as excited as me. We are leading the nation, and I believe truly honouring the legacy of William Barak and Simon Wonga. So thank you very much.
We've started off along a track which looked pretty promising. The song lines were lining up, but suddenly the people we're negotiating with change. There's another mob in there, and they have a different view. What do you reckon?
Okay. Thank you for that. South Australia recently went down this path, the treaty road also. They had a treaty commissioner They went straight into negotiating treaties, agreements, a little bit different to us. Then they had an election not long ago, and they got a new government in, and everything's off the table now. When the legislation that we spoke about earlier, when that was introduced in Parliament and it was debated in the lower house and the upper house, the opposition had made it very clear, if they are successful in the November election, there will be no treaty on the table. In an ideal world, we would love to have bipartisan support to continue the roads to treaties. But we're not in an ideal world, and the only safeguard that we've got is that this body that I'm setting up is independent. The government can't touch it. Okay. The legislation, there is legislation there. It is an act of law. If we get a new government, yes, they can repeal legislation. Any government can do that, but it's a little bit harder to do, and they have to have the numbers in the upper house. We hope they don't have the numbers in the upper house, if they do get in. That's the only safeguard we've got. It's not a lot, but if we still got a representative body, if we get a Liberal government in, we can still chip away at whatever happens. That's what we've done for the past 230 years, and nothing's going to change. And I have faith that, I shouldn't have faith, but I'm putting all my faith that we'll keep the same government. But we'll see what happens.
Actually, I have a small question. I just wanted to ask you about that patience. Where does that patience come from?
I think the patience comes from deep within. I don't know whether, I know that my mob, the Aboriginal community that I deal with from a day-to-day basis and live with, and my mum, my own family, we have humour. Humour is one of our biggest assets. We see the funny side of everything. We do despair, and but it's the humour that gets us through it, that keeps us going. When I look at the elders who fought the battle of us being counted in the census in the 67 referendum, their battles would have been harder. So when I look at the elders who held the cultural knowledge and weren't allowed to pass it on, and all the pathway that they've made for us, as in getting us to this stage. I don't know where the patience and the resilience comes from, but if you're strong in your culture and you're strong in your identity, whether it takes 230 years or 500 years, we will get there. And I believe Australia is maturing. I think Victoria matured a lot quicker. Everywhere I go, when I talk to my own community, we also talk to the non-Aboriginal community, and a lot of the sentiment that I'm hearing and seeing is that I reckon if it went to a vote tomorrow in Victoria, whether we have a treaty or not, overwhelmingly we would win. Yep. If you ask the people, we would win. Yep. I have no doubt about that. Politicians we've got to convince. And someone said to me the other day, Jill, why do you think they're so scared of treaties? Because when you look at other countries, such as British Columbia and America, their economy, they've got treaties, their economy, and New Zealand, I was going to say Tasmania, didn't if only. Their economies didn't go broke. Their country didn't go broke. They're still quite a wealthy, developed country. They didn't lose any power, their governments. So I don't know what the fear is. I really don't. But there is fear. Unless it's sheer racism, I don't know. But don't quote me on that.
Hello, my name's Fraser. I'm from Gippsland, and I'd like to acknowledge Banjo Clark because I met his family a long time ago when they were setting up the Eel Festival. And I would just like to ask, and I do see it actually happening, we're starting to raise up a wonderful new generation of ethical leaders such as Banjo Clark. And how are you going to continue that process? And secondly, the practical question is, who funds your treaty committee at the moment? Just following on from that first question. And how will you maintain that?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, if we do have a change of government.
Yeah. At the moment, the state government fund the treaty process and have done for the past 2 years. If we do get a change of government and they're not supportive of treaty and they won't give us any funding, then we'll continue on. We have over 200 Aboriginal organisations in Victoria. I think we can mobilise. I reckon we could actually mobilise the voices of non-Aboriginal Victorians. We can do fundraising. We can't just give up because there's a new government. Now, to your first comment about Uncle Banjo Clark, Uncle Banjo is a true elder. He's now passed on. I know his family. I know Auntie Libby, his daughter, who's a very good friend of mine, and she keeps me in line. But I believe we are growing more Banjo Clarks, more William Coopers, more Marge Tuckers, all the elders that did all the hard yards. We're growing the next generation in the same, I believe anyway, in the same way. Yeah.
And could I just acknowledge you because of you we can. And I know it's going to keep going from the way you speak.
Thank you very much. It was a beautiful NAIDOC theme, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, it was inspirational actually.
I hate to keep on the same theme, but let's just argument's sake say we do keep the same government in. We know that in Australia governments don't ever seem to last so terribly long before they collapse. Is there a sense of urgency to try to get the whole process done in the lifetime of the next government? And do you think both parties could accomplish that in, say, 3 years' time?
I personally would be working on to get bipartisan support. That's what I would. We can't rely on political terms. We need to work on bipartisan support from both major parties. And I don't think that's out of reach. I actually believe it can happen. It's just going to take a bit more time.
My name is Elizabeth Sinclair. I work for Victoria Police at the Burundara Police Station. And I feel a bit naive here tonight as I'm not really well educated in what's been spoken about tonight, which is probably what you've just explained then about the education of kids and that in the community. But so this might be a bit of a strange question. But I'm just wondering going forward, given from what I understand, Indigenous culture is very diverse, lots of different languages, different cultures and that within Australia. How would we then bring that into the school system if we want to start to teach, a language or a culture? How would we decide what we would actually teach?
Yeah. Already, schools are teaching Aboriginal language in schools. Where was I? Echuca Primary School, Echuca West Primary School, actually teach it there. And they use local, I think it's Yorta language. So there's language there, and wherever the schools are, if there is enough there to teach, then you would use local language. But if you can't, then I would recommend or suggest that we look at other languages that we could adopt or provide. You're right, it's a lot more complex than what it is in New Zealand. In New Zealand, they have one language. We have here in Australia over 500 languages. In Victoria alone, we have 32 languages, Aboriginal languages. So it is complex and it is a challenge, but it can be done.
And I should clarify, the reason why I'm here tonight is I want to learn, and I think we become a better force if we learn about the different communities we're trying to look after.
Yes, I agree.
I heard you speak about representation in that this is a state and states want a thing. What does it look like in terms of representation? Is it a couple of people from different language groups or different clans across the state? Or, yeah.
Basically, what I can share with you, because it's all highly top secret, what I can share with you is the thinking at the moment, and this is not my thinking alone, this is 2 years of engagement and consultation with community and with government. So it's just not me plucking out these figures out of my head. So what the thinking is at the moment is that there will be up to 30 traditional owners who will sit on this representative body. There will be a full-on election process to get those 30. All Aboriginal people who live within the borders of Victoria, I know there's border issues, but live within can vote within those elections. So I also have to set up our own electoral commission, electoral roll, electoral boundaries throughout the state of Victoria, and where myself and the team are almost there to actually announce sometime later on this year what that would look like. But that's the current thinking at the moment. And the other challenge for me in that is this elders' voice. Elders play a very vital role in our culture. So how do I make sure that I also develop an elders' voice of some sort that sits over this rep body? So that's also part of my brief, is to actually do that. And that's easier said than done. Okay, so that's a hard one. Setting up a company by guarantee and setting up elections and that, easy. Alright? But the elders, no.
Jill, just going along those lines, and thank you, you are so inspirational. That's fantastic listening to you. With that representative body, have you been talking at this stage about kind of a term of reference? I'm sorry, I'm probably coming from a non-Indigenous perspective here, but thinking about those representatives, and will they kind of have so many years that they're there and then voted in and out, or you're not that far down kind of decision making?
There will be terms and there will be ongoing elections for vacancies, and however we're going to look at a seat, how many seats and all. Yeah, but I can't share any of that now because I don't know at this stage. But yes, we are.
The representative body, talking with the government and someone adjudicating. I don't understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the representative body, their role, their main focus will be to negotiate with government this treaty negotiating framework. So that's the rule book. That's going to pave the way as how treaties are going to be negotiated. What's on the table, what's off the table. In the legislation, it outlines that the representative body will negotiate with government around treaty framework, around setting up the treaty authority. So once we have that framework, that treaty authority, that umpire, independent umpire, will make sure that everyone stays on track. a bit like the watchdog, so to speak, if I can put it as blunt as that. Yeah, so that's what they will do. And however this framework's going to pan out, whether it's going to be one treaty, multiple treaties, my guess it has to be multiple treaties because we're never one peoples, so, but you can have both. I mean, treaties can achieve so much. For example, some statewide asks is that cultural footprint that I spoke about in the Victorian landscape. Culture being compulsory to be taught at all levels in school. There could be a percentage of seats in Parliament for Aboriginal Victorians. Yes. So, that's a collective treaty, but there has to be traditional owner-based treaties because we're never one big group. Yeah. And that umpire will make sure that it's done right.
Thanks very much, Jill, for such an engaging discussion. Thanks to everyone for such great questions. It was interesting what you said there about a certain number of seats reserved for Indigenous people. I mean, New Zealand's had that system since the 19th century, so I think it's time for Australia to catch up. Thank you again, Jill, for such an amazing talk. We've got some gifts for you.
Okay.
And
I got one.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank staff from the Mundane Terminal Centre and University Advancement, and in particular Simone Hamlin and Angela Burt for their outstanding efforts in organising tonight's oration.